Introduction. In a world where humanity's existence has been forever altered, society now struggles to survive against a threat that is no longer fully human. A fungal infection has swept across the globe, turning most of the population into dangerous and savage creatures, robbing them of their minds while leaving them physically alive. In this new world, survival depends on cunning, trust, and the ability to stay one step ahead of both the infected and the few remaining humans who are even more dangerous than the monsters themselves. Among these survivors, one man and one girl must find a way to survive together, even when everything around them threatens to tear them apart. Chapter 1: The Fall. The world before was one of bustling cities, tall skyscrapers, and interconnected lives. Joel Miller, a construction worker in his late 40s, had once lived in such a world. The outbreak came swiftly, spreading faster than anyone could have anticipated. What began as a few isolated incidents soon turned into global chaos. Joel lost everything in the early days: his home, his family, his sense of security. But he survived, adapting to the harsh, broken world that followed. For 20 years he had wandered through this post-apocalyptic landscape, hardened by the loss and driven by a fierce determination to keep going, even when the world no longer made sense. Infected humans roamed the streets, mindless creatures driven by the parasitic fungus that had overtaken their bodies. The infected were dangerous, unpredictable, and relentless, but the surviving humans were often even worse. Factions, warlords, and militias fought for control of dwindling resources, willing to kill anyone who stood in their way. One night, Joel found himself sitting in a crumbling warehouse on the outskirts of a former metropolis. The rain pounded against the shattered windows, and the distant groans of infected echoed through the abandoned streets. He sat quietly, his rifle leaning against the wall next to him, his knife sheathed at his side. He was a man who had seen too much, a man who had built walls around his heart to protect himself from further loss. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door, a soft, tentative sound, barely audible over the storm. Joel's hand instinctively went to his knife as he stood and moved toward the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. Anyone showing up in the middle of the night, unannounced, was usually bad news. He slowly opened the door a crack, peering into the darkness. Standing there, drenched and shivering, was a teenage girl. She was no older than 14, with scraggly hair and a determined look in her eyes. She was holding a pistol, but her grip was unsteady. Joel stared at her for a moment, trying to assess whether she was a threat. "I need your help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please." Joel and Ellie meet for the first time in the dark warehouse, with tension and distrust filling the air.